Hi, hi everyone. Welcome to our session. It's shifting as an agile coach. Mark and I want to talk about some of the shifts that we see on the horizon to be effective, to be a more effective agile coach. So we'll get into that later. I want to introduce myself. I'm Bob Galen, aka the Agile Moose. So I do have a moniker. There's a little bit about me, but I don't want to necessarily get into a lot. I am a CEC emeritus. So with the Scrum Alliance, what that says is I was coaching. I had a coaching certification for long enough that I could actually retire from the certification. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but that's enough about me. Oh, and I've also written a book called Extraordinarily Badass Agile Coaching, which will probably you'll hear more about later on. And my conspirator in crime is Mark Summers. Mark?
Yeah, thanks, Bob. In fact, the book you just mentioned, the Badass Agile Coaching, it was had a great pleasure of collaborating with Bob on that, and he let me write a few chapters. So thank you very much for that, letting me do that, Bob. I've really been into Agile since about 2006, and that's when I kind of started my Agile coaching journey. When I first took on the role, we're talking about roles a little bit today, that role of being a Scrum Master, but that's I guess when I start about thinking about learning about agile coaching. Really, I still have the CEC badge, so I'm not yet retired. I have that delight to come later on. Yeah, so I'm excited to kind of talk a bit more about agile coaching. Really, actually, my focus for a number of years now has been professionalizing the world of agile coaching. So helping, well, both for myself, but also helping others kind of get even better at this craft in terms of agile coaching. One of the things that I've been involved with, I act as the product owner for the Agile Coaching Growth Wheel as well. So that's something that I've been working on. So let's get into it. Shifting times, Bob.
Absolutely. So everyone thinks, as Mark and I were preparing for this, we were trying to explore, what we thought would be relevant and what sort of take a look ahead, not in a prediction way, but just in a trending way. And that's what we're going to go through. We think the times are shifting. For anyone, this isn't just for agile coaches. This is for anyone who call yourself a change agent. Call yourself a guide in agile context. So Scrum Masters, Agile Coaches, Enterprise Coaches, RTEs, change agents, leaders. I would think some of the things that we're going to talk about are applicable for leaders as well. So if you're in this space, and most of us are, where things are shifting, technology shifting, AI, there's disruptors. We want to look at like what are some critical aspects that we've seen that we're trying to guide our clients through to that.
Yeah, and you say looking ahead, but we're really also just observing what's happening now. We're not even looking that far ahead. So I think we're
Yeah.
going to take a look at 8 shifts that we're kind of seeing right now. So let's go there. Oh, lovely moose. What?
It is crossing a chasm to some degree. Hopefully, he or she safely lands on the other side.
Yeah.
What's the first shift, Mark? So, what the first shift from our point of view, and there's no particular order. We're not in priority order, but there's notion of moving from role centricity to skill centricity, and the Business Agility Institute and the Scrum Alliance partnered on a survey. They were looking at trends in Agile, looking at trends in certifications, but also looking at general trends. And one of the things that came out of that struck me, and this was published maybe a year ago, uh, but that struck me is they said roles are being de-emphasized. And you see this if you think about what's going on in the current economics and the current markets, folks are getting laid off, etc. Some roles are getting de-emphasized. Scrum Master roles, Agile coaching roles, etc. Some safe roles are getting de-emphasized. There's some layoffs happening, or they're just reframing the titles, if you will. Sometimes it's a release manager or a release coordinator is really a Scrum Master or a coaching role, and the roles are becoming less important, and it's shifting to don't worry so much about what people call you or what your job title is. I mean, it's relevant. You need a title, I guess, in today's hierarchies. You need a title. But what's so far more important than that is how is your skills? What skills are you bringing to the table? And are you growing your skills? And there's that shift. So an agile coach, worry less about, I'm an agile coach versus an enterprise agile coach. Worry much more about, and Mark and I like to look at the agile coaching growth wheel as a baseline framework for how do you determine what skills and how to grow them. Where are you and how to grow them? And the growth wheel is a wonderful way to assess your competencies, and then the emphasis is grow your skill set. Companies are really focusing on what you, and if you think about it, it's not the title, it's what you can do. What you can do, what you can bring to bear to deliver value. So that shift's occurring, and I'm seeing people, some people are on the other side. They're really still sitting in roles, and they need to move to skills.
I mean, in some ways, titles maybe don't matter, and certainly in terms of as we talk about agile coaching skills, rather than it being a role of agile coaching and whatever you call yourself, these skills might be appropriate. But in other ways, maybe titles do matter, and it does seem like we've got a saturation of these different roles. The very fact that you had to introduce this and say agile coaching, regardless of whether you're a release train engineer, a scrum master, an agile coach, a delivery manager, regardless, and how they all interplay, and it's kind of it feels like it's got a little bit much. And I've always been very conscious of this idea that maybe sometimes if I go into an organization and I'm calling myself an agile coach, what's the impact on the scrum masters? Am I disempowering them? When I was a scrum master and doing that kind of thing, there was no other agile coach lurching around the corner. I felt like a superhero. I was having conversations with, the leadership team to kind of influence change. But it does feel like we've almost sometimes created agile hierarchies, which I'd be kind of very, very keen to avoid.
It's right on point, Mark. One thing I didn't say that I want to add, and then we can move to the next one, is I've been coaching coaches in lean coffees and things like that. And the other day, and I've seen this pattern many times, but someone was talking about, there's a project management role, and I'm a scrum master, or I'm a agile coach, whatever you are. And they're like, I don't want to take that. I really need a job. But they were looking down their nose at the project manager role. And I was saying, you know what? If you need a job, it's not a compromise. Go take that role. And then bring your agile skills. From my point of view, if you can do that role, bring your agile skills to the role. So it's skills are sort of, they can disrupt that, is what I'm saying. Don't get binary, or don't be exclusionary to these roles. Bring your best agile self to that role, and then add that to your complementary project management skills. Bring your agile skills there, and see what you can do to really make a difference in that organization and the value that they deliver. There's sort of this partitioning in people's heads. These are agile roles and these are not agile roles, and I would say blend that a little bit, particularly in this market. And don't feel like you're compromising something. I don't think you are.
I know, Bob, you were talking about moving on there, but there's one more kind of point I'd like to make on that. And I think that's a call for those people like going into organizations as agile practitioners, as agile coaches. Be sensitive to the people in the organization. Focus on like building their skills over implementing the change yourself. It's about building that internal capability and building these skills in others. And I think as agile coaches, we have a duty to kind of build that capability in others. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. Frameworks over patterns. Woohoo! Okay, so I'm gonna be a little bit controversial maybe, and start with something like, I really feel like people have stopped thinking and innovating in organizations. I'm going to try and avoid saying things. When I started in Agile, I'm going to try and avoid that. But when I started in Agile, there wasn't so many things, solutions, and stuff out there that we were kind of just implementing. And I think we have a duty as well as Agile coaches to make people think think about their situations and what things might help them move forward. I think we've got saturated with, with frameworks. I'm probably talking more about those kind of organizational scaling frameworks more than anything else here, and seeing some of those things like SAFe and others as solutions. And they're pretty pictures. It's nice to. It gives us a comfort blanket to choose those things. But I think we are starting to see that those scaling frameworks, those frameworks, they're not really leading to success in terms of huge impacts on the customers and the markets, and they're not really they're not freeing people. They're not Agile for me is about creating an environment where individuals and interactions can thrive. The experts can be making the decisions, and I think they're more refreshing people than anything else. So yeah, I mean, Bob, I'll bring you in here. I've got a little bit more to say on this, but how does that how do you feel about that?
It absolutely resonates. I mean, just yesterday, so I was joking. I was talking to some coaches yesterday, and I was joking that I was in the bathtub, and I was thinking, and the worst things happen in the bathtub, but I was thinking about frameworks, and I was even thinking about Scrum, Mark, like Scrum and Kanban. And I was looking forward to it, and I was like, I long for a day when we're not talking about Scrum and installing Scrum, or you're doing Scrum or you're not doing Scrum, where you can take Scrum patterns and you can implement them, and you can take Kanban patterns. So it's not just the scaling frameworks, it's any of these frameworks. Like, I think we get stuck on them. And I do see an emerging, sort of, Jürgen Apello and his unfix patterns, and and people are decomposing some of the frameworks into workable patterns, and I see a lot of startup organizations not getting stuck on using something that's fixed, but picking out things that work for them and installing patterns. I see that emerging, and to me it's really healthy because we're starting to think. So instead of installing, to your point, instead of installing a framework, we're starting to think about what do we need to do. And then a week later, what do we need to change, and what do we need to do next, and patterns. And I hope that changes. I think it's going to bring us, forget the patterns versus or frameworks. I think we're going to get better results. What I'm seeing in these organizations is they're moving faster. There's a lot of buy-in. You're not installing something from the top down. You're not prescribing something. You're emerging something from the bottom up. And there's some wonderful patterns from all of the frameworks.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly something, it very much influences the work that we do in Be Liminal. I think we've definitely pivoted our approach to kind of working with people, helping them identify, what are their challenges, and we talk to people about their tensions, and working with people, then choose the patterns, and I think that's a great approach. So whether it's if you identify that you've got a lack of psychological safety, then you can work with them, and then you might say, okay, well, maybe you want to try this pattern around asking check-in questions, because every time you do that, you're building a little bit more safety. Or maybe we need to teach leaders how they show vulnerability, or maybe we need to kind of get get people making agreements between people, and that all of these kind of are patterns that might help you build that psychological safety. Or I guess a more organizational example, just to give an example, would be, imagine you sense a tension that there's a lack of innovation and collaboration across the organization. Lots of organizations have kind of mastered maybe innovation and collaboration at the team level, but when teams have to work together, and kind of how do you do that? So it might be that you're doing things like big room planning. And I don't mean the kind of abomination that some organisations do, where all the teams have to plan what they're going to do in the next 3 months, and then they all get together and have to agree a plan. It's not about plan. It's about innovation and collaboration. It's about ideation. That's what the original intent of big room planning was. Or maybe it's hackathons that they're using, where people come out of their teams to do something different. So doing something different, to kind of generate innovation. But it's about identifying what those tensions are, and then working with people to design appropriate experiments, rather than just kind of blindly following a framework. And last point for me on this one is, I think, again, I'm always going to link this back to, and as Agile coaches, what I think we need to do. And I think the trap that often we've fallen into is we get brought into organizations with the premise of, oh, we're thinking of implementing SAFe, or we're thinking of implementing Scrum, or Kanban, or whatever it is. Can you help us? And actually, because there's not a lot of jobs at the moment, and many people are in fear of not having a job, it's like, okay, yes, I can help you with that then. But I think, maybe to really be successful and really help organizations make an impact, perhaps we need to be a little bit more courageous.
I couldn't agree more, Mark. I'm glad you brought up like the organizational dynamics and patterns. So it's not just ways of working directly or technical ways. It's the innovation parts, it's the design parts, it's the organizational dynamic parts, it's the people parts. Can be patternized as well. And I do think as coaches, we have to, there's some unlearning and learning we have to do, right? In many ways, I think we talk about, our clients, patterns are easy for our clients. They don't have to think. Well, as a coach, I don't know if we have to think so much, right? We have to think lightly. Now, from a patterns point of view, we're going to have to be very situational. We're going to have to be very pattern aware. And so there's some broad learning curves. I would emphasize the unlearning the easy bits and leaning into the hard bits, and being courageous to take some risks with our clients, because you're emerging patterns. You can't blame it on SAFe. Oh, it's not working. Well, it's a SAFe problem. Now we have to co-create that with our clients. So I love that.
And I think the important thing is people thinking. So let's bring it back to that. So don't
Exactly.
there is some lovely stuff in SAFe, some lovely patterns actually that you can abstract, but let's abstract them and apply the ones that work. Right, let's move us on, Bob. So what's next?
So professional coaching, and it's shifting from a professional coaching focus to an agile coaching focus. And I mentioned earlier the Agile Coaching Growth Wheel. So if you're not aware of it or familiar with it, I highly recommend you go take a look. Not just if you're an Agile coach, if you're interested in coaching skills, go take a look. The shift that I'm alluding to is, I think I don't want to blame someone. I was just talking to someone yesterday, and I probably got a little snarky about professional coaching, too snarky about it, and I think they took it personally because they probably had a certification. And I'm really not. I think professional coaching is a wonderful foundation. It's a wonderful skill. It's in the Agile Coaching Growth Wheel as a competency. I think aspects of professional coaching are in the self-mastery, the hub of the wheel. So the internal dynamics. But what we did that I think was a mistake is we leaned too heavily into it. And we made professional coaching what I think of as the primary stance. And we stayed away from things like providing advice or leading or getting in the game with our clients, getting on the field, getting on the pitch occasionally. And so professional coaching, sometimes you can marginalize yourself. You're just asking questions. It's the client's job to figure things out. And sometimes that's appropriate contextually. But I've seen so many Agile coaches that lean too heavily into professional coaching. I call it this. Now I get snarky. I call it death by 1,000 questions sometimes, and I've seen it. I've been in rooms. I've seen it, and it doesn't always work out well. And now the movement is moving to well-rounded coaching. So where professional coaching is part of it, but we also have skills. We can dance around other competencies. We're just as competent with advising. We're just as competent in leading. We're just as competent and comfortable in mentoring. I think in terms of some of the stances, we're leaning out stances, and professional coaching is a leaning out stance, and I think we want to move into Agile coaching and emphasizing lean in and partner with your clients.
What else, Bob?
That's it.
I thought I'd ask a coaching question just to see.
and it bounced off of me, Mark, but it was nicely done.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know whether you was hoping. I mean, I am a professional coach. I've got all these badges and the certifications, and it really helps me. But what I think has really benefited me is it's almost like I learned to be a consultant before I learned about coaching. So which was just accident, I'm sure, but so I learned about how to communicate ideas. I learned about how you build relationships. I learned about giving advice and telling stories. And then a few years later, I went out and kind of went and honed my professional coaching skills and went deep into that and got all the ICF certifications. What I think is beautiful about coaching, though, is there's a lot of transferable skills that actually enhance the other stances. So the quality of your listening when you're even in a consulting or advising stance, is really really useful, and kind of has pimped that up, and of course, absolutely, when you're facilitating, listening, powerful questions, giving feedback, all of that stuff is really really useful. So it's very valuable stuff, and we're not saying don't do professional coaching, but all the stances are important. And of course, in Agile coaching, the most important thing is your own emotional intelligence, the self-mastery aspect, and knowing how to be in different situations. I also, when I was first a consultant, I was a little bit amazed where sometimes I'd be partnering with some other Agile coaches, and the client would come to me and say, what is it with them? All they do is ask questions. And they got kicked out because they only had that one stance. The best Agile coaches can do that dance between the stances to meet the needs, to move the client forward. And that sometimes you need to be a little bit more directive. It depends where the client is. If they have low confidence and low competence, in the thing that they want to move forward on, sometimes you have to give them some of their information, because they don't know, or they just need to kind of have that woolly blanket and move around them. You need to be their cheerleader.
I just want to say yes and to what Mark said. One point. The professional coaching is foundational. He said it, and I'm just reiterating it because it's important. So it's an important stance. It's the glue. I think it's the glue. Ethics, for example, is one of those glue points that is emphasized in professional coaching that's really important in well-rounded Agile coaching. So it's an important part, but I think many coaches made the mistake of leaning in too heavily. So you got to lean back from it a little bit, and that's the shift.
Okay, let's mosey on. So team focus, from team focus to system focus. Now, I don't know. I think that there seems to be a belief that Agile really is just a team game. And actually, maybe that belief was even once true. Again, I'm saying that phrase again. When I first started, I was working in small, medium organization, and that kind of seemed to be quite typical for the first few organizations that I worked in. And it was quite effective to build self-managing teams that could release value every couple of weeks to the client. Supported by great Scrum masters who could kind of bulldoze things out of the way and kind of help make change happen. But we seem to have crossed some kind of chasm, made a leap like that moose has, and most of my work seems to be in larger enterprises these days, and the same trick doesn't seem to work in that context. I think the context has changed. So I think just having teams, they're so disconnected in larger organizations from the clients. You have to look at the whole system. You have to. I mean, many people have talked about this. We just kind of want to highlight this. You need to look at the whole flow of value from concept to the impact that it has on the clients. And you need to make changes. You need to change things like structures, the way that we do governance. It's about making work flow, and it's not just about creating great teams. When I train people and I consult with people and I see teams, and their increment is a document that they're going to hand over to another team, or you've got to. So they're not even creating cross-functional teams. They're just putting the word team around their existing structures. This is not going to do it. Yeah. So we need to play a different game.
I agree with Mark that I think almost all coaches, even these higher tiered coaches, I'm an enterprise coach, I'm an organizational coach, I'm a transformation coach. When I talk to them, 80% of their discussion is teams, team performance, team behavior, team this, team that. And yes, the teams may have issues, but I bring Pareto into play, like the 80-20 rule. I think the teams are only 20% of the problem, or teams are only maybe 20% of the challenge in an agile transformation, whether it's in the small or at scale. The hard bits are outside the teams. As a Scrum Master, the Scrum Masters, I think when I coach Scrum Masters, I try to raise their vision. Everything they say is team, team, team. Well, what if 80% of the team's challenges are outside the purview of the team? well, then you need to coach you need to coach systemically. Now, I think one of the drivers for that is it's easy to pick on teams. Teams can be really challenging, but at the same, they're much easier to deal with than trying to move organizational change or cultural change at a leadership level. But that's where the coaching needs to shift. So I think almost every coach is too team centric nowadays, no matter what your title. And this is what we're talking about. We need to start, regardless of scale, regardless of the context, start looking at things systemically. Start asking. I'm teaching a coaching class now, and what we're doing, one of the things to drive that is to look at a situation, and I ask us, what are all the possible drivers for that situation? The team has too much whip. The team is taking on too much stuff. Well, there's some things in the team, and then what are all the organizational dynamics? So these are now coaching targets. These are systemic coaching targets. And it's not just the team. There may be 22 things. Now, strategically, what are you going to attack, if you will, or what are you going to coach? But broaden the view, broaden the lens. And I think that's incredibly important for to start doing more of that.
So many times I've been brought into an organization and, I've been met at the door by, some director or somebody put their arm around me and they've said, oh, we're so excited about this Agile thing. Really great to have you on board, Mark. There's the team, go make them Agile. It's like my heart always sinks when that happens, and I think, oh, this is going to be a bit of battle, but we need to kind of look outwards. It's it's not the team that's going to have the shock. It's probably that leader is going to have a bigger shock because he's basically saying it's the team that needs to change, not me. Well, I think actually the bigger change is with the leadership, with the management structures. And I think also that's where, as we've transcended, as we talked about in the last point, into these larger organizations, that's not what we've not really tackled that. We've really just focused on the team stuff. We've kept the same management structures. That's the stuff that we really need to start to tackle to kind of, how can you have self-managing teams, but we still kept the management structures? It just doesn't make sense. Right. So where are we going next? Ooh.
So moving from agile so my goal as a coach is to transform someone to be agile to focusing much more on value delivery and impact, organizational impact, customer impact, ROI impact as the goals. And clarity is the value that I'm producing. And to this day, I talk to a lot of coaches who are out. I'm doing sort of job search coaching of coaches, and I try to get to know, hey, what's your focus, and what happened at the last job, and or you're interviewing, and what are you looking for, and they're talking. It's about agile gobbledygook. I call it agile. It's Scrum, and my job, I went in there, and my job was to implement Scrum, and it failed. And they failed to adopt it. And so Agile was the goal from their point of view. Installing Agile, getting high performance Agile, whatever that means, Kanban, getting high performance safe. And I really think we have to drop that. Just get that thinking out. And it starts with even like what the terminology. I'm encouraging coaches to stop talking about agile terminology and start talking about business terminology and outcome terminology with our clients, with our stakeholders, and make that shift to help them achieve. So it's not about us delivering agile. So many coaches are like, agile's my job. No, business outcomes is your job. Partnership is your job. Understanding the domain is your job. Yes, you have these coaching competencies that help you to do that, but the goal is different, and we need to shift.
There's probably a couple of things I'd like to highlight on this from skills that the great agile coaches have on this, and I think rather than installing Agile, installing Scrum, whatever it is, it's the superpower is really getting curious about the situation. What are your challenges? Curious about that. How do you see the future? So I think actually agile coaches as a leader is somebody who kind of can work with people, be curious, and co-create a better version of the future. And then you're like their thinking partner. So I am actually tapping into the professional coaching thing here. You're like their thinking partner, working with them to help them move forward step by step along the way. That's kind of how I see that.
Absolutely. I had a thought, Mark, and I lost it. You blew me away. So why don't we? I have nothing else to add to that, and we can move on, and maybe I'll bring us back.
Okay, so we've got a couple that are kind of around change. So I'll start with this one. This is this idea of stop doing this change to people and start focusing on change with people. I mean that might seem a little subtle, so let's see where we go with this. So what I see a lot with change is that it's often management who feel that it's their responsibility to do change. When we're starting this agile adventure, really, maybe what happens is a group of managers might get in a room together, and they might be like designing a new agile operating model. Meanwhile, of course, everybody's really nervous. What they're talking about is my job safe. All of this kind of stuff goes on in organizations, and then after a couple of months, the doors are opened, and ta-da! Here's the new agile operating model, and everyone goes, phew. And then it's about implementing that agile operating model, and either nothing changes because there's no support to do it, or people start to resist. To kind of quote Peter Senge from the Fifth Discipline, people don't resist change; they resist being changed. Change is something that actually as humans we're quite good at dealing with. We're quite adaptable as humans, but we just don't like change being done to us. So I think the kind of real change in emphasis here is, and again, it relates to that point about being curious. So go do change with people. Be curious about what their situation is and help them design change that is going to be useful to them. So involving people in that change. And I think part of what we do as Agile coaches, it's not just supporting that change, but as we do it, it's about teaching people how to do it for themselves. So that they can, so that it becomes sustainable as well, and they get used to kind of doing it. So teaching people how to change for themselves is an important part of it.
I think there's a lean in part. This goes back to what I was saying earlier. I think sometimes as coaches we lean away from the client. It's almost like a therapy sort of posture. I'm the therapist and you're my client, and I have some separation there. I have some professional separation. And I think that same thing can happen with coaches. And when you're changing, so to me the change with people is we're partnering with you. We're becoming empathetic. Like, what is your history? The thing that I forgot earlier, Mark, on Agile is to go how to connect to how to connect to your clients is storytelling. Maybe one of the first things to do in moving to value goal or moving with stakeholders or now collaborating with change. Ask those folks you're coaching to tell you their story. What are the positive? Get to know them. Get to know their journey. Get empathetic with it. Was there trauma in their journey? Where are they at before we push? So we can help them move at their rate of change. The other thing is I think is important with change. Appreciative inquiry is a change model, if you will, or an organizational development model that focuses totally on what are we good at. So when you're changing with people, inquire, not, oh, we're change. It's like change has a negative aspect very often. We're not doing well now, so we're changing to something new. Well, let's appreciate the past and leverage our strengths as part of our change strategy. And as coaches, it starts with that listening. Mark, it's professional coaching, listening skills, asking, inquiring, getting to know their history. And I think that's relationship building. So what I was talking about leaning out and leaning in, don't be afraid to build some relationship to gain some of that deep empathy.
Yeah, it's about going back to the system one. It's about revealing the system to itself. So it's not starting with a solution. It's about inquiring, that curiosity, going
Yep.
discovering things, whatever it is. So it's uncovering the interesting things, the truth from everybody's different perspective, getting that all on the playing field and kind of working through that, and then deciding not trying to fix everything as well. It's like, what's the one most important thing that we've got to focus on first, and how do we go about that, applying agile ideas, agile principles, and some of the patterns that maybe we can kind of take from all of the different approaches that we've seen. Yeah, and I mean, even when I see organizations implementing things as simple and small as Scrum and Kanban with teams, often it's done in a way to people. You're now going to be a self-managing team. I think that's the wrong way to start a self-managing team, telling them that they're going to be self-managing team. There's just seems something completely wrong with that. It needs to be a choice. Go talk to them, understand what their issues are. Maybe Scrum and Kanban or whatever is not, or extreme program, it's not right for them. Yeah, maybe they just need to do something simpler to kind of be. It's not addressing their needs, their tensions, and that's what we need to focus on. So we're staying with the change theme, so I'm going to move on to the next change theme, and that is, oops, I've revealed the last one there. Oh, apologies, Bob. From episodic change to continuous change. So it seems to me that organizations seem to make big decisions. Often they'll procrastinate for a long time and not make any decisions. But at some point, we'll decide we're going agile. Bob, we're going agile and we're going to do it big. It's going to take us a year. It's going to cost us 5 billion. No, 5 million. That's more realistic. And we're going on this journey. We're ready for it. It never seems to work, of course, because what we find is that it feels like we've got a new shiny ship that we're on. It's this new agile ship, and at some point we start to run into some issues, and it gets hard. Trying to do this big change piece where you're going from A to B. And then we realise that we're in a little bit of trouble and it's getting hard. So we just start moving the deck chairs on the top of the ship, rather than actually making any real change. And we're still on a big ship. It's still not really that adaptable. You still can't kind of make those fast turns and things like that. So yeah, I think we need to move away from that idea of it being a transformation. I know a lot of people have struggled with that idea of transformation because it feels like it's one big giant leap from A to B, like the moose jumping over that chasm, where rather than being on that one big boat, wouldn't it be much more agile if we were on smaller boats and we could turn fast and all of this kind of stuff. So for me, agile it's about small. Agile is about small. It always has been. Small teams, small change. Making change something that is continuous. I think to be agile means to be adaptable. That's part of being agile. So it's building that capability within organizations that being agile is not one huge transformation. It's building the capability to adapt as the world changes around us. Yeah, and it's also about involving people in that. So it's a participatory thing that we do with people, not to people. That also kind of relates to that kind of last thing. It's almost like what we've been doing is we've been using the traditional approach to projects in order to manage change. Huge projects to manage the transformation to agile. Whereas, don't we need to use an agile approach to make the change to an agile ways of working? And we need to do it continuously. It's something that we need to keep working at. I think agility. It's a bit like fitness. I once did a lot of exercise, did a lot of running, and I got fit enough to kind of run a half marathon, and then once I've done it, celebrated the success, declared, I'm fit now, I'm agile now, and I stopped training, and I got fat. And it's the same thing with agility. You have to keep working at it. It's not something else. You won't be agile anymore. You'll kind of you'll go back to what you were before. So it really is something that you work at continuously. You do it with people. Let's move away from this episodic change. And also the other thing that I'm finding is that, maybe a lot of the change models that are out there, I think they're failing us a little bit now, or at least how we're using them. There's some good ideas in there as well, but if they're done over a 12-month period where you go through a phased approach, they're not going to be successful. Maybe some of the ideas, if you can rapidly go through them in a few weeks with small experiments, maybe they work in that way. But I think there's a lot more research perhaps that can, given the state of the world at the moment, and in terms of how do we deal with change these days, and I think we need to advance that a little bit.
Real quickly, one reaction is just to what Mark said. I think that same notion of moving from frameworks to patterns applies to change models. So as coaches, I've always coached coaches. You should have some, Cotter, Satir. You should have some change models, frames in your back pocket. You should understand them. You should have deep tools. But there's this case of, oh, I'm going to just apply Cotter and I'm going to turn it into a Gantt chart. I think to Mark's point, that's not effective. That's becoming ineffective. But bring those patterns, bring those change, that change awareness patterns into your coaching. Another thing I was going to say to Mark is to lean into, and it's change with people and continuous change, is what I see a lot of, I want others to change, or as a coach, but I don't see agile coaches changing in context. So we should be part of the change. We should be reflecting like every day and challenging ourselves. Maybe we should change. Maybe we should change our strategies and approaches. Maybe we should install other patterns. The other thing is avoiding the hard people. Well, we'll change the teams because they're easier, and maybe we'll do a little bit of change ourselves. But that sort of HR function and that finance function, we're going to let them alone because Bob Galen is the CFO, and no one wants to coach Bob Galen. And you know why. So, but we have to holistically change, like embrace everyone. So not partition the change. So continuous change and change with people, and sort of jump into the pool. Everyone has to jump into that pool and change at their own rate. So we can't have these pockets. I see it that way. Again, moving from this more programmatic view and maybe low-hanging fruit view to a much more holistic view.
I mean, also for me, last thing on this is I think the notion of experimentation is key. As agilists, seeing ourselves as like the chief scientist. It's empirical. When we're designing experiments to solve organizational tensions, we need to kind of help people clearly identify what the problem is, what the pattern is, maybe that they're going to experiment with, what the outcomes are they're going to expect, how we're going to measure success, what's the cadence we're going to measure that success. So get empirical about the change as well. I think that's very very, very important. Be agile.
Absolutely, I would agree. Final one, everyone, is moving from this I have arrived, like I'm a coach, I'm a CEC, I'm a PCC, I'm a CEC and a PCC and an MCC squared, whatever. I've got these letters, and I've arrived. I've been coaching. Right, Mark talked about history a few times. He went back, well, in the beginning. I'm going to go back in the beginning. I've been doing this for a long time, and I continue to grow. Mark talked about it. Mark's a role model. He talked about consulting and then moving into coaching, and he just didn't tip his toe in it. He went all in on coaching program and got a certification, and it complements what he's doing. I see too many complacent coaches who have a mindset of I've arrived, and sort of I deserve to be treated this way, and I don't, and they've stopped growing and they've stopped learning. Part of that is unlearning. Throw some things away. I want everyone to ask yourself, look in the mirror tomorrow morning or this morning, and ask yourself, am I coachable? And then ask it again, how coachable am I? In my travels, I try to do a lot of coaching. I would say 50% of the agile coaches that I meet are sort of full of themselves. They're egocentric, and they're not really coachable. They love to coach others, but it goes back to self-mastery. They're not internally self-aware and coachable. And it affects their effectiveness and their client effectiveness. And the ones who are coachable, I see them leaping tall buildings with their clients. So it's a real distinction. So I've arrived mindset to I've never arrived. I can continuously grow and be continuously curious. Agile Coaching Growth Wheel is a wonderful reading my book, reading Mark's chapters, reading the book, and applying it and practicing your craft, looking at your role as it's a craft, and you're never done refining your craft.
I guess, Bob, now you kind of you got to CEC, you felt you'd arrived, but then felt you had to go beyond it and go to Emeritus status. You had to go beyond the ride. Yeah.
Exactly.
I think for me, key on this is kind of remember, actually the key trait for me in Agile coaching is a growth mindset, and that's absolutely really important thing to kind of always hold on to. Remember it's a journey that you are never going to arrive. Of course, on the Agile Coaching Growth Wheel, you can kind of rate yourself. It gives you opportunity to do that at kind of 5 different levels. I purposely would never ever want to rate myself at the 5th level on any of them, because I never want to feel that I've arrived. I want to feel like I'm on that journey. For me, it's like everything is a work in progress, including myself. Yeah, that's really important. Having said that, you will always have this feeling. I think with all these 8 things on the left-hand side, they're not bad or good, and probably as Agile coaches, we've all been there on the left-hand side. We will have all had this feeling of arrival. We've all implemented frameworks and taken that approach. So we're not trying to other this. We have done this stuff as well. But I think, given where we are, we need to really, it's like the Agile Manifesto, I guess, there is some value on the things on the left here, but given today's world, there's probably more emphasis we need to kind of give on that right-hand side in terms of our approach to Agile coaching. So, never stop growing. I guess that's the important thing here.
When I was writing the book, in the Genesis, Mark and I were collaborating a little bit, and we were sort of complaining or talking about the state of Agile coaching. And at the time, this was quite, 3, 4, 5 years ago, and we were talking about the lack of professionalism, mediocrity was something, we can do better. We're leaning too heavily into these stances. And that's really the genesis of the book, the genesis of the PI, the Personal Improvement Survey that Mark and I developed for comparative agility, the drivers behind this skill set shift, or these shifts that we're hoping, we're hoping for, we're trying to shift ourselves, is all about that growth and being better. And being better, I think, for our clients. It's less about being better for ourselves. It's much more about achieving that promise of agility. So that's the aspiration. These badass coaches. I think organizations in the world needs badass coaches who can help us achieve those promises of agility. And it's optimistic. There's still opportunities for it. But we have to rise above the left-hand side, and we have to shift over to the right-hand side. With that, Mark, what do you think? Final word for you?
Well, it's been fun to explore these things. Yeah, I think let's put it out there as a challenge, not just to the people listening to that, but also to us, Bob. I think we need to kind of keep challenging ourselves to kind of focus on that right hand side as well. So, but thank you very much, Bob, for the pleasure of exploring. I think we've got a couple of closing slides, maybe.
I think, but more so just we're done. Stick a fork in it. I think.
Rock and roll.
So do you have a final word?
No, I think we're done.
Right. The only one I have is everyone. Mark may talk about continuous growth, but I've arrived. Right. So I've arrived, and I'm ahead of Mark. So I'm looking. So I beat him. No, it's not a competition. No, it's a play. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Like I say, you've gone beyond, Bob. You haven't arrived. You've gone beyond.
No, I'm going beyond. So it's like an infinity. I'm back at the beginning. Oh, yeah. So everyone, it's an honor to work with Amra. So it's an honor to work on this event. And I am just, every time I work with Mark, I just walk away with a smile. So thank you, Mark, for hanging out with me today.
Yeah, thank you, Bob, and thank you for Comparative Agility for hosting us and inviting us back once more. Thank you very much.